inverter fed uh, what is this grid connection of a normal grid connection using a normal conventional inverter, right? So we will be discussing about the practical implementation. So we will begin with how to implement it in a laboratory. We call it a workbench. We will see how we can easily create a workbench. Generally, I assume that most of you will be in the beginning stages of your uh, career, so that you will be trying to build a laboratory of your own, say for smart grids. Then, if you are to implement it as a product in the product form, then we will have to go for a DSP based implementation, and we will discuss about some of the practicalities involved in such sort of a implementation. In the next part, we will discuss about some of the new inverter topologies. We know the difficulties with our conventional what is called bridge type inverters. So nowadays, new breed of inverters are coming in. We call it as buck inverters or infinite level inverters, differential inverters. These are some of the new types of inverters. We will discuss about these things in the later session. So we assume that our smart grid we are going to deal with consists of so many uh, non-conventional energy sources like PV array, wind turbine, fuel cells, batteries, all sort of things. And our aim is to connect it to a grid, and we connect it to the grid using an AC to DC converter or generally an inverter. And for practical purposes, we can assume that the energy generated or voltage generated from PV array, wind turbine, all these things are connected to a battery. And that battery is acting as a voltage source, which is connected to the inverter, and we are feeding it into the grid. Right? So basically, it is a battery connected to the grid through an inverter. So we take this as the power circuit diagram, a simple power circuit diagram. We have a PV array, which is connected to a capacitive filter to have a constant or almost constant voltage, and then it is connected to the inverter, and the output of the inverter is connected to the grid through an inductor, which is called a filter inductor. And in most of the cases, the voltage level of the uh, battery will not be incompatible with the grid. So we will be always connecting it through a transformer. So the transformer primary or secondary, whatever it is, this point is will be acting as the grid point, and this is acting as the grid voltage VG. So this forms the power diagram, and we have to implement the control part of it. So this is the lower part is the control block diagram. So what we do here is we have to have a control of the grid current to be injected by controlling the inverter. So this Ig or IL decides the power injected into the grid. So our primary aim is to decide the current to be injected. The current can be injected in several ways. So basic way is to inject the current in phase with the voltage at unity power factor. There are certain rules regarding power injection. IEEE has formed several standards. And one such standard is that it should not, the solar system should not consume any reactive power from the grid. Of course, there are possibilities for injecting, reactive powers into the grid, but it should not consume reactive power. So our aim is to inject a current in phase with the grid voltage. The magnitude of the grid voltage will be decided by our requirement. In some cases, we decide that this much of current must be injected into the grid. The rest of the current or rest of the power must go to a battery charger or some other sources, a what's called super capacitor or some sort of thing. If no other devices are connected except for the grid, then the Ig value of Ig will be decided by this thing, what is called maximum power factor operation, maximum MPPT power correction. So here the power injected into the grid is decided by two equations. The first equation is P equal to VI into cos theta. So if we assume cos theta as unity and the grid voltage is constant always. If it is a stiff voltage source, we can consider V as a constant. So the entire power we inject into the grid will be decided by I alone. Right? So by controlling I, we control the power injected. Another way of thinking the power is by using the energy transfer equation. If we have voltage V1 here, V2 here, then the power transferred from V1 to V2 is nothing but V1 into V2 into sine delta divided by the impedance, reactive impedance of the inductor. Right? So the grid voltage is constant. What we can control is V1. So V1 is the voltage generated at the terminals of the inverter. So by controlling this voltage, we can adjust the power. Suppose this is V1, our injected, what is called grid voltage, and or if V2 is the grid voltage, V1 can be adjusted, slightly adjusted like that. This forms the our delta, right? So by adjusting the magnitude and delta or load angle between grid voltage and our generated voltage, we can control the power. Right? There are two modes in which we can decide upon the power to be injected. So let us concentrate on this one, a MPPT based power injection. So what we do is we keep on adjusting Ig, the grid current injected, depending upon the maximum power point. The theory of maximum power point injection is known to you. You will be getting a power wave shape like this. So we will always keep the inverter operated at maximum point. So we decide the voltage at which the power is to be injected by measuring the PV voltage. We measure the PV current. They are subjected to MPPT algorithm, which gives us the voltage at which it is to be operated. Then we have a measurement of that voltage. They are compared and given to a PI controller. That PI controller gives us a DC value corresponding to the current to be injected. That current to be injected must be multiplied by a sine wave, unity sine wave, in phase with the grid voltage. That unity sine wave in phase with the grid voltage is decided or created by what is called a PLL, phase lock loop. So the grid voltage will be given to a PLL, it will be producing a unity sine wave. That multiplied by I will be providing us with the sinusoidal current which is to be injected. Right? So this is the sinusoidal current to be injected. And it is compared with the actual current injected, that current error. We can inject that current either by some sort of a hysteresis current controller, but we know that hysteresis current controller creates a lot of issues because it is not having a constant what is called switching frequency. So frequency spectrum will be much complex. So generally, in order to make it a constant frequency operation, we generally convert the reference current into a reference voltage. So conversion of reference current into a reference voltage is done by introducing another closed loop. So our reference current is compared with the actual current here. It is passed through another PI controller, which will be deciding the reference voltages, VA, VB, VC, the reference voltages. They are compared with a carrier wave like this. It will be producing our switching signals. So these switching signals will be given to our 4 switches. That is how it operates. So in order to implement that, you have to program a PLL, right? So what does the PLL does? Duty of the PLL is to create a unity sine wave, which will be multiplied by our reference current DC value, so that reference current is generated. So that unity voltage generation is done using a PLL. So what we do in a PLL is our grid voltage, which may be a polluted one, which may not be a pure sine wave, it is given to a phase detector. And the output of the PLL, which is created from a VCU, which is a pure sinusoidal waveform, is compared with the phase detector. So the phase between our polluted wave as well as our output wave is compared, is calculated, and the error will be looking like this. It will be somewhat like this, and somewhat like a noise signal. So in order to get a steady output voltage, we have to filter out all these noises. So we provide with a filter so that it creates a steady voltage as an output. a steady voltage is given to a voltage controlled oscillator. So that voltage controlled oscillator will be producing a pure sine wave. So from a polluted actual voltage, or PLL will be producing a pure unity sine wave, which will be used for creating a reference voltage and reference current, and from that reference voltages for our grid operation. So we need not worry about simulating this phase detection, filter, and voltage controlled oscillator. All these blocks are available in the our advanced or high-level languages like MATLAB. So in my approach, what I am doing is I will be trying to simulate the entire system in MATLAB, and then from the MATLAB created code, we will create the code for implementation also. So we need not worry about programming all these things. So in a grid connected inverter, in the control strategy, we have to program all these stuff, right? We have to create an MPPT algorithm, which is already available in MATLAB. We have to program a phase lock loop, which is again available in MATLAB. PI controller, again available in MATLAB. We can tune it also in MATLAB. So we need not worry about all sort of things. And some mathematical operations like comparison, multiplication, this generation, pulse generation. All these things are also available in MATLAB. Right? The switching pulse generation is done with a comparison of carrier signal. So in implementation, we can divide the entire circuitry into two parts. We call this as a power circuit. And the power circuit is the actual circuit, physical circuit, and it works in the analog domain. We call it as the analog domain. And the all control part can be called digital domain. And this entire digital domain is created, entire digital domain is created using or implemented using either a DSP controller, microcontroller, or whatever it is, or a desktop PC itself. And the transition from the analog domain to digital domain is formed using a lot of electronic circuitry. They are called interfacing boards. So we will be putting sensors here for measurement of voltages and currents. So we need to have some sensor boards. Then some buffer circuit boards. So the sensors will not be directly connected to the controller, or DSP board or microcontroller board for protection. So we will be having some sort of buffering actions. So buffer circuit boards will be there. And from that, as inputs to the digital signal processor, it will be creating firing pulses. And those firing pulses will be connected again to the analog domain or power circuit using what is called driver boards. There are standard driver boards available. We can make use of it. So the implementation procedure will be described in two manners in this lecture. So first of all, I will be discussing about creating a workbench very easily. So creating a workbench is very easy using what is called the Simulink desktop environment in MATLAB. It was earlier called the real-time workshop, RTW, in MATLAB. So in the experimentation process, where we try with different types of circuits, we try with different types of controllers. In all those cases, we need not code it into a processor and test it. We can easily tune those parameters using what is called the Simulink desktop environment. So what we require additionally is a data acquisition card. So several data acquisition cards are available in market. So we can purchase one data acquisition board, insert into the desktop so that we can easily create a practical workbench. The second case will be using a digital signal processor board. Right? So if we are going in for a practical or product-based development, we can convert our simulation program directly into a DSP program. So we need not program the DSP from scratch. The same simulation program we created can be downloaded into a DSP board or DSP processor. So as we mentioned, the analog domain to digital domain is done using some sensor boards. If you are making use of a Simulink desktop environment and a data acquisition board, these boards will have an analog input signal, ADCs, which are able to handle voltages between minus 10 to 10 volts, right? But if you are going for a DSP implementation, the voltage levels are fixed. I mean, very limited. It has capabilities of 0 to 3 or 3.3 volts. Or in certain cases, we can have 0 to 5 volts also. But in our case, in grid connection, we will be dealing with voltages almost sinusoidal. So we need not have to have a Hall-based voltage sensor. A general transformer, a 230 to 3 volts or 6 volt transformer will do the purpose. Right? So since the current waveform is slightly distorted, having harmonics, then better to go in for a Hall-based current sensor. And since a data acquisition card can handle both positive and negative voltages, the simple sensors will be sufficient. But in the case of a DSP implementation, which can handle only positive voltages, we have to have mechanism to shift it from negative to positive, right? Then we measure these values and then subtract it down so that inside the processor, we will have both positive and negative values. So the hardware setup we are going to discuss about is based on our real project we carried out. And the project was a battery charger and discharger. So this was developed for Bangalore Metro Rail Corporation, right, as a sponsored project. So their requirement was this: their batteries have to be regularly charged as well as discharged, because in order to extend the life of a battery at regular intervals, the batteries must be discharged. Generally, they were making use of a passive load for discharging, and they wanted to change it to a grid connected inverter based discharger. So we designed the inverter based discharger so that it is connected to the grid. The basic operation of battery-based discharging is equivalent to a smart grid connected with any unconventional mode of generation connected to the grid. So this was the setup, basic power diagram of that. This was the grid. In order to make it compatible with the voltages of the battery, we provided a transformer, then three-phase inverter, and the battery voltage will be constantly changing. So in order to make it constant, we put a boost inverter. The boost inverter is required for our MPPT control also. In MPPT, what we do is our voltage at the solar terminals will be constantly changing. So in order to make it constant voltage, we will be putting a what is called boost inverter also, boost converter also, right? So the setup battery discharger is nothing but equivalent to a solar based grid connected inverter. And these are the results. For charging, we can say that it is current is in one direction, and for discharging, it is in the other direction. So we get currents in phase with the voltage in both cases. And in one case, it is in phase. In the other case, it is in the opposite phase. As I told, in the case of DSP-based implementation, we need to create a shift in the current. So we need not provide a shift on our own. All the new generation current sensing boards, say ACS 758 board, comes along with that shifting operation. So this one, the output, this is the typical board, and the AC voltage will be, current will be passed through this chip. At the output side, we get a level shifted current like this. And after that, in order to make it perfect, in order to ensure that the voltage is not increasing, we will be connecting it through a buffer circuit to the DSP or processor. Nothing but a voltage follower in which the voltage is clamped to 3.3 voltage, so that we can be assured that the input voltage is never increased. This is the practical board we had for that project. Similarly, the voltage measurement was done using pure resistances. So this is series resistance, series connected resistances of mega ohm range, high values, and it is connected in series with a low voltage. And the voltage across the low voltage is taken out. So a large voltage, 230 voltage, grid voltage can be reduced to a very small voltage by making use of a simple voltage divider circuit. Right? And it is fed to a differential amplifier circuit like this. And this differential amplifier AMC 1200B is having a capability of shifting the level of the voltage as such, right? So it for a 5 volt system, it will be giving a shift of 2.55 volts. So for a 3.3 volt system, it will be creating a shift of 1.29 volts. Right? So we need not worry about creating an additional circuitry for shifting the voltages. Now we see how the programming is done. So as in every project, our project will be beginning with the simulation study. So we have to first of all prove that our theory works in simulation. So in order to demonstrate our case, I have taken a standard program available in MATLAB. It is a MATLAB program, a simulating model of a grid connected inverter. You can easily find it out from your MATLAB library. So it has a PV model available, and it's an irradiance block is there. Right? We can program this irradiance block. We can give the value of irradiance at different time intervals. We can make it increasing, decreasing. We can vary it in a completely arbitrary manner. Similarly, we can arbitrarily change the temperature also, irradiance as well as the temperature. So depending upon the value of present value of irradiance and temperature, our MPPT program will be adjusting this boost converter to create maximum power point tracking, right? So this block is the one for MPPT algorithm. So it takes measurements from the cell, voltages and currents, and it decides the pulse, it provides the pulses for the boost converter for MPPT operation. And this is the other block which controls the inverter side. The inverter side control algorithm gets the feedbacks of the voltages and currents and the VDC requirement of the grid, the bus, DC bus, right? And it controls these points. This block controls provides with the firing pulses for the inverter. So the simulating block or simulating file is drawn in such a nice manner that all the power analog parts comes down and all the control blocks or digital blocks comes up. Right? So our next step is to convert. We assume that all our sensors and our driving boards are ready with us, and the only thing we are worried about is how to create the necessary codes for controlling it. So just to have a glance of what are the blocks inside that are available inside the MPPT. This is the glimpse of the MPPT algorithm we have. There are several MPPT algorithms. It keeps tracks on the maximum power point there. So these are the blocks involved in our VSC controller. In VSC controller, all the PLL and other blocks come in. So it takes the voltage measurements. It is given to a PLL block. So that PLL block will be creating unity sine waves. And the VDC reference is given by us as the input. It takes a measurement of the bus voltage and the VDC regulator, which is having a PI controller inside it, which decides the ID reference. And the IQ reference is taken as 0 because we are going to inject the current in phase with the voltage, unity power factor operation. So we ensure unity power factor operation by making IQ reference 0. So ID reference is created from this voltage error. So it is given to the current regulator, and this current regulator will be creating the voltage magnitude. And that voltage magnitude will be multiplied by the unity waveforms created by our PLL. So this block will be creating 3 reference voltages, 120-degree phase shifted reference voltages, and that reference voltages are given to a pulse generator, 3-phase pulse generator circuit already available in the MATLAB. So let us see how all these control algorithms are generated in the Simulink desktop real-time mode. So as we already discussed, it is based on a desktop PC along with a data acquisition card. Right? So the same control program we have written in MATLAB Simulink can be directly converted into a code which will be run in the processor, microprocessor. And the microprocessor is nothing but the Intel or AMD processor inside your computer. So the processor takes care of creating these pulses, and it gives out the pulses directly to the outside world using this data acquisition card. Right? There are several advantages of going in for this mode of operation. The first one is parameter tuning. Right? We have our desktop monitor in our front, which runs the program, and it is directly given to the our real analog setup, right? So our Simulink blocks will be available on the screen. So we can keep on adjusting the values of those parameters in the program so that all those new values will be directly loaded into the program, and the program will be automatically upgraded. And suppose that we have to tune our PI controller. So we begin with arbitrary values of Kp and Ki, and we run the program and see the responses. And if the response is not that good, what we can do is we can just change the value of P and I in the desktop terminal itself in the MATLAB environment. The new value will be automatically downloaded and the program will be automatically getting updated. Right? CC parameter tuning is one of the best features of this real-time Simulink desktop real-time. And at the same time, all these values can be easily monitored. Of course, at the power side, we can connect several physical scopes at the output side. But suppose that we wish to calculate or we wish to measure some of the parameters which are not easily measurable physically. Suppose that if we are controlling a motor, we wish to know what is the shape of flux, magnitude of flux inside the motor. They are not directly measurable. But if we have a flux line in our MATLAB program, we just need to connect a scope block in the MATLAB and see what is the shape of flux there, right? So in order to visualize measurable as well as non-measurable parameters, it is possible using this real-time desktop environment. So during the experimentation phase, this is the ideal tool to do. So the additional thing we require is a data acquisition card. This is a typical NI card which we made use of, which can be connected directly to the PCI Express board. PCI Express board, right? So that there will be termination board available separately. Termination boards available with terminals. We can connect the outputs of the sensors directly to these boards, so that all this data will be exchanged to the PC through this PCI board. So PCI Express board is a board inside the PC, which is having our data bus available directly to the board. So all the measurements will be directly available to the data bus of the PC. And after calculations, after doing all the calculations, the firing pulses, zeros and ones, will be made available to the digital points through this data bus. So that digital output can be directly taken out from the termination board. So what we have to do is we remove all the physical or analog part from the program. These are the two blocks which are the control parts, and these are to be converted into real-time code. So we can separate them out, and these are the points where magnitudes, measurements are coming into the control boards, right? And these measurement points are to be replaced with MATLAB blocks corresponding to our physical or desktop environment. Similarly, these were the points where the digital pulses were going into our thyristors or IGBTs, right? So here we will be connecting the corresponding digital output blocks, right? So what we do is there are a lot of blocks available. So what I will do is I will just stop my presentation here.
Janan sir.
Muted ആയിരുന്നു അല്ലേ?
Yeah, muted. Okay.
So in MATLAB, in the Simulink library, if you search in the library, we can see Simulink desktop real time, right? So this is the block sets for Simulink desktop. So analog input blocks are there, digital analog output, digital input, digital output, all sort of blocks are there. So bring these blocks into the points where we need to have our physical connection, right? So if you put an analog input block there, then in our Simulink program, the pin corresponding to the pin of the data acquisition card where our particular signal is connected will be available directly, right? Similarly, if we connect a digital input or digital output this point, then that value will be directly available at the particular point, right? So this is the program with all the ADCs and digital pins connected, right? So this is for DSP, and this is similar for all platforms, right? So here we will be connecting our analog input blocks. So we need 5 analog input blocks here. So for one for PV voltage, one for PV current. Then these are for voltages, these are for currents, this is for the DC link voltage, right? And we need to connect one block for controlling the pulses of boost inverter, the other PWM connections for this thing, inverter, right? I will stop sharing this.
Janan sir.
Again muted. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was the model for real-time Windows. So if you put blocks of these desktop environment, one more menu will be coming here, desktop real-time, right? So you just click on any analog block it will ask for the board, right? So you press on the install board. It will list out all the supported boards, right? So if we go to National Instruments, these are all the boards supported by MATLAB. So PCI boards, PCIe boards. There are thousands of boards. Almost all data acquisition boards available in the market are supported by MATLAB, right? Suppose we have a National Instrument Board PCIe, say 6321. You just click it. So that, and we add it. It will represent like there is no board available here, but this is how we add a board to it, right? Then what we do is automatically all the settings will be done by MATLAB. But if you require some configuration to be done, you go to the code generation. Right? The code generation automatically SLDRT.TLC. TLC stands for Target Language Compiler. Right? This is for Simulink desktop environment. It will be there. And what we have to do is just click this pin, run in real-time mode. Right? So what it will do is all these programs will be converted into a compatible C executable file, C file, and in the real-time mode, not in the simulation mode, but on hard real-time mode with a specified sampling time, which is specified in our program, right? So all these values will be available in MATLAB or in the actual real-time code. It will execute all these programs and the digital outputs will be given out. It is in some form, it can be treated as a hardware in the loop sort of programming, HIL programming, right? Suppose we wish to change a PI value in it, we need to change the value as and when the program is running, right? Just change these parameters, any of these parameters, and it will be automatically get updated. So that is with our Simulink, our MATLAB based operation. In the second case, we go in for DSP implementation. So we make use of the same program. Nothing is getting changed. Only thing is that a new hardware board is brought in rather than the data acquisition board, right? So this is the standard board, TMS 28335 board available. So what we can do is we can directly take the output and input pins through this development board as such. This is sufficient for normal experimentation study. But if you are going for a practical implementation, we need to create a control board like this. So that after programming, we have to download the program from our PC to this board. And after it is being done through this development board. And after that, it can be inserted into our control board in the product. So current and voltage sensing we already discussed. So all the procedures are same. Right? Instead of this desktop environment, we have what is called a embedded target environment. We had a library there. In the library, but before that, Simulink real-time desktop is already available with MATLAB, but in the case of DSP-based implementation, we have to install that first. Right? In MATLAB, there is an add-ons pin is there, right? So you just click on the add-ons one, get hardware support package. So many packages are there. Arduino package. You see all the hardware support packages are listed here. Right? So there is an embedded support package for MATLAB board is there. Right? Embedded code supporter. Right? So we have to install that first, so that in the MATLAB library, a new set of blocks will be inserted. Right? It is called embedded coder support package. Right? It supports almost all the blocks, boards. Right? So if we have a 28335 board, we have to choose these blocks. Right? So analog to digital converter, ADC pins are there, blocks are there, PWM pins are there, digital output digital pins are there. Right? All sort of things as we did in the case of Simulink digital and desktop environment is available. Right? So only difference is that instead of previous blocks, we have to add the blocks corresponding to our digital signal processor. Right? And once we do it, the same procedure. Once we click the run pin, it will convert that into hex code. It will directly download it into our controller, and then it will start executing. Right? So easy. And since 28335 is a floating point processor, we need not do anything else, because almost all mathematical operations in MATLAB are directly convertible into a floating point programmable mode. But if you are making use of a fixed point processor, then all the mathematical operations in MATLAB, Simulink, will not be compatible with that processor. So we have to go in for fixed point operations. We have to convert all the blocks into fixed point mode. If you are making use of a floating point processor, nothing to be worried about. Almost all blocks will be compatible with it. That is the advantage. The only disadvantage is that if you create a MATLAB file, MATLAB Simulink file, and convert that into hex code, the program size may be slightly higher. Right? But it has its own solutions. There are certain optimization blocks available. Right? All the mathematical operations are optimized, and hex code are directly available in MATLAB libraries. So if you make use of these blocks instead of our ordinary mathematical operations, then optimized hex code will be automatically downloaded in the place of our ordinary program. Right? And there are specialized blocks for PID controller, class transformation, right? Space vector generator, If you require a space vector generator for controlling the inverter, then we need not code it. Just this optimized block is there. We can bring it. Right? So this is how, using the same program we create during the simulation process, we can create a hex code for real-time implementation. So the advantages of going in for DSP based operation is that there are standard PWM pins, and we can create dead time in software itself. Right? If you are making use of the other data acquisition card, then this feature will not be available. So we have to create our own dead time to prevent shoot through the same legs. That is the only disadvantage with this. Now we go to our next part, which is just an introduction to the other topologies, inverter topologies. The basic disadvantage of our standard inverter is that it is having more THD content. Right? A basic inverter was a square wave inverter, right? But square wave inverters are not used now. We go in for what is called PWM inverters. In the case of a PWM inverter, what is the main disadvantage? The main disadvantage is that the amplitude of voltage generated is reduced. And even though we say that the harmonics is less in PWM, the real picture is that THD, total harmonics content in a square wave inverter is much lesser than the harmonic content in a PWM generation. Why? Because if you analyze the both waves, the fundamental component will, in the case of square wave, will be this times 0.63 times VDC by 2, this value. Whereas in the case of PWM, the maximum value is this DC value itself. This is called VDC by 2. VDC by 2, here it is 0.63 VDC by 2. More fundamental value. If more fundamental value, the rest is harmonics, right? Total voltage is, total RMS square is the fundamental square plus harmonic square. So if we have more fundamental, less harmonics. Since PWM waveform is having lesser peak value, it has more harmonics than a square wave. But the only advantage is that all the harmonics are away at this point, right? At the switching frequency. It can be easily filtered out. Whereas in the case of square wave, we have third harmonics, fifth harmonics, all sort of things. They cannot be easily filtered out, right? So our aim is to bring in inverter topologies, which is having lesser amount of harmonics. At the same time, we have to create amplitudes higher than what is possible from normal PWM inverters. So, and one more factor is that the power transferred we refer to our power transfer equation, V1, V2 by X, right? If we have more amount of harmonics, in order to eliminate those harmonics, we have to have more values of L, more values of X. So the power transferred is proportional to V1, V2 by X. So higher the value of X, then the value of delta to be used for power transfer has to be more. So instability will be more, right? So we have to reduce the value of L so that we can operate it with a small delta, and we can reduce the value of L only if it is possible to have lesser amount of harmonics. So people were making use of multi-level inverters. So the disadvantages of multi-level inverters is that with the addition of each and every level, it increases the number of components, right? We know that in order to increase level by 1, we have to introduce 2 switches or 2 or 3 switches per phase, right? It becomes very bulky. So another solution is, the new trend is what is called the buck inverters. Let us see what a buck inverter means. It is nothing but making use of a buck converter and make it work as an inverter, right? We know that by changing the duty cycle of the buck inverter, we can change the value of DC output voltage. But what we are going to do is we change D continuously. Duty cycle is changed in a sinusoidal manner. We begin with 0, keep on increasing D so that the DC output voltage will be slightly increased. We keeping on increasing D up to its maximum value so that the output voltage will be maximum. Then we keep on reducing D. The output voltage will be less, right? So at the output, we get a varying DC, right? If we vary this DC with the same frequency with which we have to get an output AC voltage, then we will get a rectified AC like this, right? And in order to invert this, what we do is we make use of a H bridge like this. So for this duration, T1 and T4 will be kept on. So we get output voltage like this. And then for the second half, we close these 2 switches, keep this open so that current will be flowing in the opposite direction. So we get this portion will be getting inverted in this form. So we get a AC waveform. This is called a buck inverter. So since it is basic operation is same in the case of ordinary inverter and this inverter, but we achieve this by providing proper filtering so that we smoothen out the waveform. So these are the advantages of going in for such a buck inverter. Number of switches remain same, limited of the levels. This cannot be called a level, but we call it as a discontinuity, right? It depends upon the switching frequency. So if the switching frequency is slightly less, we will get a wave shape like this, right? But this can be increased. Discontinuities can be increased or smoothened by increasing the switching frequency alone. So whatever may be the number of levels of the voltage, we do it with the same number of switches. And the switching losses are less because only one switch per phase is, oh, I'm sorry. Here, only this switch is operated at as PWM. These switches are operated at power frequency only, right? The switching losses will be less in this case. And it will have reduced THD. DC voltage requirement is less. Another point, plus point is that you see this, we get a DC voltage which is as high as this DC, this VS itself, VS itself. It is getting duplicated here. Whereas in the previous case, it was VDC by 2. Here, VS itself. So we get almost double the output voltage from the same DC, which is good for our smart grids. And there is no shoot-through menace because all the H bridges are inverted or operated, and before these legs comes an inductor, right? This inductor prevents any shoot-through current through it. So even if you don't provide a dead band in our switching pulses, nothing is going to happen here. So there is no shoot-through menace in this case. This is just a comparison. But using this topology, we get an output voltage as high as 1.23 times our source voltage, whereas in a traditional one or PWM one, we get only 0.612 times the voltage. Right? So this is a comparison of the voltage level requirements. You see the output voltage. This is the output voltage waveform taken in a CR. See, we get almost a pure sinusoidal voltage waveform. You take the just see the harmonic analysis obtained in a scope. We obtain it as good as a single line. No other harmonics. Harmonics are there, but they are very less. Right? So in order to do analysis, it would always better to have a clear mathematical model of a system, right? And we can easily model this inverter because the only modeling we need is that of the DC-DC converter. We can easily model a DC-DC converter. How? We just write the equations for the inductor current. We can easily find the inductor current by knowing the voltage across it. What is the voltage across it? At one point we have Vs. At the other point we have the output voltage, right? And we can easily convert that into state space modeling, right? We create a state space model with the inductor current as one state, capacitor voltage as the other state. So the final mathematical model will be looking like, right? This is the transfer function of a buck inverter. So this is directly made use of in modeling a inverter. So this is the buck model. This is the varying D, duty cycle, sinusoidal duty cycle. And since we cannot have a negative duty cycle, we find the absolute value of it and give it to the inverter, right? Then at the output side, what we do is we do the unfolding. Unfolding is done using a switch block, right? And this is the load block. If you simulate it, you will be getting a sinusoidal voltage like this, almost sinusoidal. But the only difficulty here is that you see at the crossover points, zero crossovers, there is a slight spikes like this. That's the only disadvantage. And these spikes at the zero crossovers, this is called crossover distortion. It becomes significant if we deal with a load with large power factor, poor power factor, right? So there are methods to eliminate it. We will discuss later. Another topology is differential inverter. So that crossover distortion can be eliminated by making use of a differentiator like this, differential inverter like this. In the differential inverter, what we do is we take two inverters. This will be acting as a one converter. This is acting as a second inverter. Then we will be changing the duty cycle in this manner. Similarly, we give 180-degree phase shift and change the duty cycle in this manner. And take the output voltage is taken as the difference between these 2 points, so that we will get sinusoidal output voltage here, right? So since there is no crossover, zero crossover taking place in both converters, that crossover distortion can be eliminated. So this is how we eliminate the crossover distortion by bringing in what is called a differential inverter. And one more topology developed by one of our, as part of our PhD program, one faculty member from TKM itself was behind it. This is called a 4-switch infinite level inverter. What we do here is just a modification of a buck inverter. We operate this as a buck switch, but the loop is the closed loop, and this is always kept on. This switch is always kept on, but this so that it acts as a buck converter, and the duty cycle is varied. So we get output voltage like this. But in the negative cycle, what we do is, rather than making use of an H bridge there, what they do is we keep on switching this one, right? So this forms a boost converter in the negative direction, right? So we get at the output, one boost creates a voltage like this, and at the load, another buck creates a voltage like this, right? So these are the different operating modes of that. So here also, we get an almost sinusoidal voltage. Crossover distortion is not prominent in this case. It is there, but it is not that prominent in this case. This is the harmonic analysis. We get a harmonic THT as less as 0.53%. Right? And we know that our future devices will be based on what is called wide band gap. In wide band gap, we can go up to frequencies up to megahertz. Nowadays, frequency of operation is limited because of the limitations of the devices. We can go only up to few kilohertz. Right? If we can make use of frequencies up to megahertz, then all these output voltages will be almost pure sinusoid voltages. I just wanted to introduce you to these buck-based inverter topologies. So these are the things I wanted to discuss with you. If you have any queries, you can ask me.
Thank you, Jayanand sir, for the session. So it's time for questions and discussion. So if any of the participants would like to ask about what discussed so far, you can unmute yourself and you can ask. Okay, so I think there are no questions as of now, but so these videos will be shared later. They can always watch, and if you have any doubt, you can always get in touch with Jayanand sir in this mail ID and phone number which is shared with us. So so thank you, sir, for sharing this valuable. So it is actually from your experience that you have shared a lot of things, and I hope it will be beneficial for those who are interested in setting up their own workbench for working on power electronics devices. And on behalf of the department, as well as on behalf of all the participants joined here, I would like to express my thanks to Dr. Jayanand sir for sparing his time and spending effort on sharing this information with us. So thank you very much, Jayanand sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
So so we'll stop the session for today, and